Hello everyone and welcome to another webinar from Zenatta Consulting. My name is Greg Belknap and I'm excited to take you through feature comparisons for Zoho Desk, Zendesk, and HelpDesk. Appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us. Whether you're exploring HelpDesk software for the first time or reassessing your current platform, you're in the right place. And if you happen to find this video helpful, we would appreciate if you like and subscribe to us here on YouTube, as well as your favorite choice of podcast app. These days, customer support is more than just answering tickets. It's a key part of the overall customer experience. The right platform can help you resolve issues faster, work more efficiently, and ultimately build stronger relationships with your customers. But with so many tools on the market, it can be hard to know which one is right for your business. So today, we're going to take a side-by-side look at 3 of the major players in today's HelpDesk space. We're going to compare the core features and real-world performance of Zoho Desk, which is known for its affordability, deep customization, and tight integration with other Zoho apps; Zendesk, a well-established platform with strong omni-channel support and enterprise features; and HelpDesk, a lightweight, intuitive solution, usually ideal for small teams. Today, we're going to dive into a couple of different categories, and we'll take a look at how each of the 3 major players here stacks up. We've got ticket management, multi-channel support, customization and automation, self-service, and analytics. So without further ado, let's get started. Let's start with ticket management, right? That's the core element of any good HelpDesk system. Tickets, of course, being the communications that represent an inquiry or a problem that needs to be addressed between an agent and either a customer or one of your other staff members. So for each of the apps, we're going to take a look at what do tickets look like, what kind of information do they contain, as well as how they are organized and managed by default in each of their respective applications. So we're going to start with Zendesk. So what Zendesk likes to do is keep your tickets in sort of a queue that you can work. By default, your ticket views will go to your unsolved tickets, right? Anything that's in an open status. One of the things that's neat about the Zendesk application is that you'll have your list of tickets, and up here in the right corner, there's a play button that triggers a cycle for you to go through and look at each ticket in your unresolved list, right? So by clicking on this, I get brought to the first ticket in that view. Then down here, I can write some kind of reply. And then I can click on submit as either open, in progress, pending, or solved. And down here, you'll see that I have the option for going to the next available ticket after submission or staying on this ticket. By default, because I hit that play button, it'll go to next available ticket. So if I say that I'm submitting this as in progress, my page refreshes, and now I'm on the next ticket that was in my list. You can also skip tickets, and it'll keep cycling through the tickets in your list, your unresolved list, back to the beginning until eventually you've got a clear inbox. So for those of you that really like working with a clean, a zero inbox mindset, then Zendesk can be a really great option. One of the other things that Zendesk does is they let you manage multiple tickets at a time, which could be good or bad depending on how you like to structure your agent's time and attention. But as you have different tickets, they open up in these different tabs, right? So I'll go back to my list of all unresolved tickets here. And right now I have this sample ticket open. And let's say that I want to add another one of my recently viewed tickets, right? So I've got this recently viewed one that I can quickly switch back and forth between these while still technically being on the same UI. So in that sense, Zendesk is really nice about switching between a lot of tickets all at the same time. I can even be adding a new ticket even with these other tickets already open. So if I wanted to create a new ticket, obviously most of your tickets are going to come in via the customer, right? Either via email, chat, or text or phone. But if you were to create a new one, we can take a look and see what are the main elements of a ticket. Obviously, first and foremost, your ticket has to have a requester, right? This is going to represent either one of your end users or perhaps one of your staff members if you're using your help desk internally. You can add a user directly from the ticket creation, right? And here it'll ask you to specify if this user is an end user or a staff member. So I could add Harry Potter, Harry at Hogwarts.edu. All right, I'll click on add, and that's added Harry Potter as my requester. It's automatically created them as a contact. And there's an option here. It's guessed based on the domain of the email that I just put in that I probably want to create an account called Hogwarts. So I can come over here and click on create, and I can add the new organization. It's going to just guess it based off of the domain of the email, minus whatever the suffix is, whether it's .com, .org, .edu. But you can come in here and you can add additional details to the name. So if I wanted to add School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, then that becomes my new account or company. But I'll come back here to the ticket so you can see that there's actually these kind of sub-tabs within a ticket itself, right? That same thing in here, you can switch back and forth between looking at the contact, the account, and the ticket itself. Then you have to assign a ticket to somebody. There's a little button here so that the logged in user can just take ownership themselves, or you could select from a user or group in this drop down here. You can also have options to follow tickets if somebody doesn't need direct responsibility, but they should be notified about something happening with that ticket, either a new response or a new reply. Obviously, adding additional tags. You can define the type, if it's a question, incident, problem, or task, and set the priority. By default, the subject line is blank. This is obviously going to be like the subject line of an email if somebody is emailing you. We'll add a fun little description there. If I'm creating a ticket from whole cloth, by default here, it's asking me to put in a reply. So if I fill this in here, this is going to be sent to the email address that I specified in the contact, harry@hogwarts.edu. If I'm creating a brand new ticket, let's say I'm on the phone with somebody and I need to create this ticket, but I don't want to send them an email right away. I just need to take some notes. Then I could switch from the public reply to an internal note here. Needs some help with his cauldron. Then here I can submit it as either a new, open, in progress, pending, or solved ticket. So if I want to select new, that's where it would be awaiting assignment. Or if somebody is actively working on it, I could switch it to open. Right? So by switching it to open, it has automatically selected that I should be assigned to it, because in order for something to be open in Zendesk, it has to have an assignment. Otherwise, it's a new ticket. Now you can see that my internal note has been added here. And again, if I go back to my view here, and let's go ahead and say that we ended up solving this problem. So we'll submit it as solved. You can see that now the ticket says that it is solved. So if I go back to my inbox here, it's disappeared from the default view, which is my unsolved tickets. And here I could see amongst the recently updated tickets that the ticket down here has been solved. So a fairly clean and minimalist approach to displaying tickets. You have different columns here of requester, requested, priority, and assignee that of course you can sort by each of those individual elements. And again, this is really meant to be used as like a kind of a zero inbox, right? With this play view that you can do to try to cycle through these tickets and get through as many as you can, just hopping from one ticket to the next. Pretty smooth, pretty slick experience. Let's move on over to HelpDesk. HelpDesk here has a little bit more of a modern look to it. It almost is reminiscent of, it looks more like just like an email inbox to me. This looks very similar to, if I were to log into my Gmail account, right, that I can see these different boxes and statuses, things like that. These are just a couple of sample ones that they threw in on this trial version here. You'll notice that all of these are currently unassigned, right? I can see who it came from, the subject, who it's assigned to, and the current status as well as the last message. If I want to work through a ticket, I can click on it. In here, you see it kind of has almost like a social media post look and feel to it, which is interesting. I have my description of the last message associated with this ticket here, and I can enter a message here. Here I have just a rich text field. Again, it kind of feels like I'm writing a comment on a post for, either like a Facebook group or heck, even in Club Zenatta, for those of you familiar with our online community there. So here I might provide some help. And similarly to the internal note versus actual public reply in Zendesk, down here you have this private versus public toggle down here for whether or not you're adding something that's just going to be for the agents to see or whether you're actually sending it to your customer. And similar to what you would see in like a Gmail inbox or a message composer, you have your little formatting bar down here, options for some canned responses, attachments. You can make a screen recording directly from here, which can be very helpful. They also have some built-in AI text enhancement tools for you. And then similar to your Zendesk, you have the option to select what the ticket's current status is and then submit that particular reply as you're also changing the ticket status. All right, so by making a reply, it also has automatically assigned me to a ticket. And then over here on the right, we have the more detailed elements of the ticket, like its ID number, when it was created, the last message, its current status, the rating, the priority, its original source, any tags or custom fields, who it's assigned to. So all this kind of stuff is kept over on the right. I can switch between my next ticket by using these little arrows up here. So obviously the tickets don't automatically auto-advance to the next one when you make a submission. It stays on the current ticket that you are looking at. Now, I actually can't go back to my step 1 ticket that was on here because since I marked it as closed, it's left my tickets to handle list, which was up here, which again is the default view. So again, looking at the list of how the tickets are organized, very similar to what we saw in Zendesk, right? I'm actually going to hop back into Zendesk for a second here. Right here we have, kind of a list sort of row view, similar to what we might see like just a table, right? Different columns, and each ticket is a row within this table where we can see the column views here. And it looks like that's the primary way of viewing any tickets, both in Zendesk and HelpDesk, right? Is these different columns. HelpDesk prefers to put the requester, who the ticket is related to, first and foremost on the left with the subject in the middle, as opposed to Zendesk likes to have the status first and foremost, followed by the subject. All kind of, same different pathways to the same destination. Now let's take a look at Zoho Desk. So in Zoho Desk, one difference is that the default view in Zoho Desk goes to just all of your tickets rather than specifically tickets that are in an open status or that are assigned to you. So by default, you go to the list of all of your tickets. So here we can see a subject line, again, our contact, our account. There's a couple of extra pieces of information here that you might not see in another one. For example, the created time, as well as whether or not it has an overdue status and seeing what its original due date was, which could be based on an SLA or service level agreement. Along here, you can also see which channel they came from based on these icons over here on the left, right? So you can see anything that came in as a telephony thing has a little telephone icon. Something that came in via email will have the little envelope. Similarly, if there was anything with a chat, you'd see a little chat bubble. So let's go in and let's go in and take a look at one of these tickets. So when you go into the ticket view for Zoho Desk, over here on the far left, you can see all of the tickets in the view that you were just on. So kind of similar to Zendesk, right? Where as I open tickets, I can have a list of the tabs up here. You'll have something similar to that with the ticket view over here. Of course, this is just based on the view that I was currently on, whereas with Zendesk, I can just add tickets from any view that might be up here, right? And I have to open it once and then it'll stay up here, as opposed to Zoho Desk where it'll just show all the top tickets in that particular view. And you can always change the view that you're looking at for any particular set of tickets. The main window for viewing the history of all of the communications and threads between yourself and your customer, you're going to see in this conversation window here. Right? So here, if I have a lot of different back and forth elements, they're all going to be in this conversations view where I can click on any given thread and open it up to take a look at it in more detail. You'll notice a lot more information along the top here of things regarding the resolution associated with it. If I'm logging any time against the ticket, attachments, a list of any events, as well as the history of the ticket. I could see updates that were made. Now, here, kind of in the middle of the screen, kind of middle left, is where I can see those details that if we go back into, say, a HelpDesk ticket, HelpDesk keeps its ticket details and info over here on the far right-hand side, where you see like the ticket source, custom fields, tags, owner, other tickets. Zendesk likes to keep that stuff either on the far left or on the far right, with the conversation in the middle. Zoho prefers to have the conversation all the way over on the right and kind of keep those ticket properties kind of more in the closer to the center of the screen. Here, I'll see my contact info, any key information fields such as due date, status, ticket owner, as well as additional custom fields that I might add. If I want to look at other kind of information panels in here, you'll notice there's some icons here such as suggested knowledge base articles, the timeline of this ticket, or actually, sorry, not the timeline of this ticket. This is the timeline of the tickets that I have been looking at, right? I've kind of switched around from a few different tickets in my time here on the Zoho Desk screen, as well as checking anybody who might be following this ticket, ways that I could share the ticket, any skills that might be associated, and there might be some third-party extensions or add-ons. In this case, I have CRM contact info, Zoho Books details, etc. I guess one thing that's a little bit different about Zoho Desk is that by default, you won't start typing things in right away, right? You'll just sort of see the ticket, and if you want to craft a reply, you'll click on this reply button here, which you can choose to reply to all people associated with the latest thread or just reply to the most recent thread author. Once we click on that reply button, we're going to be able to, just like we're crafting an email in, say, Gmail or Outlook, right, where we have a from, a to, any CCs or BCCs. Then down here we have our email composition window with all of our formatting tools up here at the top, the ability to add attachments from a local computer or from a cloud service. And I would put my reply in here. Then I can click on the send button, or I could choose to send and change the status at the same time, similar to what we saw in Zendesk and HelpDesk. But if I don't want to change the status, I could just click on send, and you can see that it now adds that thread into the list of conversations. If I want to only look at just the communications back and forth with the customer, I can click on this little drop down to switch to just the threads. Whereas if you can see that now I have 11 threads and 2 comments. Comments are similar to those internal notes that we saw in HelpDesk, where you switch something to a private post. And in Zendesk, you have an internal note. So that's what comments are in Zoho Desk. If you prefer to keep comments and threads as 2 separate windows to look at, if that makes it easier for your particular agent, they can do so by clicking this little drop down and switching to threads and comments versus conversations, where if you switch it back to conversations, you can see that it collapses my threads and comments into one list of messages. So what's kind of our takeaway here? If you're looking for just a very clean, simple, almost social media-like experience, then something like HelpDesk is probably a good idea for you. It's a fairly small messaging window by default, so kind of more for a chat vibe, right? If you're looking for kind of that quick back and forth kind of feeling. Zendesk has a few more bells and whistles, but still a fairly simple interface. You'll kind of see it as like a chat here with internal messages here on the left. You'll see the customer replies here on the right. The other nice thing about Zendesk here, again, is that it is very much trying to push your agents to zero out their inbox. As soon as you submit a ticket, you can choose whether or not to stay on the particular ticket or end up closing the tab, moving on, right? Zendesk wants to keep your agents kind of rolling through their list of tickets, inquiries, or cases. Zoho Desk is great if you love detail, right? In here, I have a list of not only just the conversations, but tabs for time logs, attachments, elements for adding in CRM info, followers, knowledge base articles. Also, a lot more modules just visible up front, right? You know, over here on Zendesk, I've got my homepage, my list of tickets, my list of customers, list of organizations or accounts that those customers belong to, some reporting and analytics, as well as my settings screen. HelpDesk, very similar, where we just have a couple of modules here, the tickets, the agents, which those are, you know, my people helping to answer people's questions, reporting, building some automations, which we'll talk about more later, and adding marketplace extensions, right? So again, very stripped down, streamlined, very simple. Whereas in Zoho Desk, right, I have my tickets, my knowledge base, which is where I can store help articles. You can have contracts here for setting service level agreements. Then, of course, I have my customers, which will include both my contacts and organizations or accounts, as they're called in here. Then I have my analytics reporting, which again, we'll go into later. Activities such as calls, meetings, tasks. You also can access community sections, which are where you could create posts that your end users or perhaps even staff members could interact with, you know, views, comments, likes, that sort of thing. Your social media channels, you could have integrations with Sales IQ, additional social media tabs here. All right, so Zoho Desk has a lot of stuff, right, straight out the gate, which maybe it's overkill for what your organization needs. Maybe you just need, you know, kind of this bare bones, just quick and simple answers. You know, if you're a 1 to 5 person operation, this is probably going to be enough for you. If you're dealing with kind of larger volumes of tickets, Zoho Desk is probably better suited for that. Oh, another thing that I almost forgot to mention is the different views. You might remember that I pointed out how both Zendesk and HelpDesk kind of have the same basic ticket view, right? Of your different columns here, and each row represents a different ticket, right? And by default, the classic view is very similar. Well, I guess it's actually more of it's not quite the same tabular view. If you wanted to get that, you can come down here and go to table view, and you're getting the same exact kind of display as we saw in the HelpDesk and Zendesk. So here I've got, you know, my subjects, contact names, account names. The classic view is kind of more holistic, trying to kind of compact it, group all the information, all the like subject and contact information together here, then taking a look at the number of threads, number of comments over here on the right, along with the statuses, the current assigned agent, as well as some quick actions here, like getting a peek at the ticket without actually leaving the list view, or marking the ticket as unread, right? Which now I can see, similar to like I would see in an email inbox, editing the ticket's properties or deleting the ticket entirely, right? A lot of those quick actions available here that you can access through the additional options menu on something like the help desk, or by selecting a ticket in the Zendesk view. But what I really like about Zoho Desk is the work modes. This is something that you don't have the option for in Zendesk or HelpDesk. One of the work modes here is status mode, which switches to a Kanban view, where I see all of my tickets in Kanban associated by status, right? So all my open tickets I see here, my escalated tickets, on hold, pending review, other status, and you can edit what this status mode looks like of, like, say, the order. If I prefer most likely to have my escalated tickets first, I can rearrange that so that that goes first, and I'll see that first up in my queue. Another work mode, a handshake mode. This is because I have the Zoho Desk integrated with the Zoho CRM. I can see tickets that are associated with a contact or a lead versus tickets that are directly associated with a potential, aka a deal. Countdown mode organizes things by due date, right? So all my overdue tickets show up first, then anything that doesn't have a due date, and then showing things that are due very soon and things that are not quite as soon. And then over here on the right, I've got things that are, on hold, kind of stuck in limbo, in pause. And then finally, I have priority mode here, which organizes by high priority. And again, you can edit this by clicking these little 3 dots and switch which order you want to see in the priority. Obviously, you're usually going to want to put high, medium, and low. One of the things you can do is you can decide whether or not you want, if a particular status or priority doesn't have any tickets, you can choose whether or not that empty column is going to be shifted to the right, like I have it set right now, right? So medium and low don't have any tickets, so they've just been pushed all the way to the right. I could hide those entirely if I wanted by setting that column visibility to empty, right? I only see the columns that actually have something in them. In this case, I really like these kind of extra views inside of Zoho Desk. I think that gives it a bit of an edge over Zendesk and HelpDesk. But again, that all just depends. Are you looking for something that has a lot of information up front that you can take a look at, see a lot of information off the get-go of where your ticket's at without even having to click into it? Or do you just like a more streamlined view, right? You just need to see a list of tickets and you want people to hop in there and start getting stuff done. Then things like Zendesk and HelpDesk could very much be up your alley. So with that, let's jump to our next topic, which is multi-channel support. Let's talk about the different channels that you can service communications with inside of these different help desks. So to take a look at those, we're going to head into the settings for each of these apps. So in the case of Zendesk, over here, you've got channels broken up into these different categories of messaging and social versus talk and email. All right, so Zendesk likes to put the messaging and social apps first, probably because that's where a lot more support requests are being created, right? Is via either text messages or messaging directly on the website or within an app. Zendesk supports out the box embedded messaging within your website, right? So this is like if you wanted to have a little pop-up window, this is your chat feature, on your homepage or on your checkout page of asking a visitor to your website if they need any help. So you have both messaging, which is people just wanting to submit a support request right away, or proactive messages, which is kind of that thing I was talking about where if somebody's been on your website for more than 30 seconds, that you're going to have a little pop-up say, hey, is there anything I can help you find? Is there anything that you need? One of the things that is very nice about Zendesk is that talk and text can both be just managed all internally within the application. You don't have to have a third-party telephony system, which you are going to have with some of the other applications. Also connections to Facebook, X, or Twitter if you're nasty. And then, of course, like I mentioned, talk. You do have to, these are going to be separate credit subscriptions that you have to have. But again, it is really nice that all of this is just kind of in-app. I could set up different phone numbers and lines for both talk and text, just all within the Zendesk application, rather than having to go and set up a separate account inside of, say a Ring Central or a Twilio. And then finally, if you are using an actual mobile app that you want people to download on your phones, like an Uber or a Yelp, right, where people are more using those on their phones in an actual dedicated app rather than through a web browser, then you can actually use a mobile SDK to set up a support access system directly within your application using JavaScript. So very, very cool. Moving on to HelpDesk. If we go to the settings in there, there are 4 main channels here. Email being the primary one, right? Where you have some kind of forwarding address that you want your emails being sent to. Contact forms, right? Which are forms that you can embed into a website or a mobile application to allow visitors to message you directly. Like this will be a contact us, book a meeting with us. And this submitting that form will then create a ticket, which you could then follow up with somebody via email, right? So somebody visits your website, rather than them having to go copy a support email, go to their email app and set everything up, you can create this form that they can start to fill in. You can get their name, email address, and get all of the information that you want to get the ticket created. Then you can start following up with them via email with a lot of that context already provided by your end user. In addition, you have something similar is a widget here that, again, this will get added into your website and would show up as sort of a chat window in the lower corner of your website that would allow people to submit inquiries there, and they get added as tickets. Difference here, of course, is that with the contact widget, it kind of works a little bit more like a form as opposed to the live chat feature, which again is a different avenue here. So the contact widget basically acts the same as a form, but it looks like it's in a chat box. Just something that people might be a little more apt to fill in than going to a dedicated embedded contact form on your web page, right? If you want people to be able to access this contact form from anywhere on the website instead of going to like a dedicated help us page or contact us page, you could set this up there. But by default, no text or telephony channels set up out of the box for HelpDesk. So if you are needing telephony or texting, that's actually going to usually be a separate app in the text ecosystem, right? HelpDesk is exclusively for those emails, live chats, and contact forms. So a lot more limited than Zendesk. Finally, let's take a look at Zoho Desk. So going to the Zoho Desk settings here, I have this channels section where we have email, phone, chat, help center, which we will talk about more later with portals, instant messaging, social media, web forms, similar to those contact forms we talked about in Zendesk, and community. Again, if you're having public repositories for articles or announcements that people can like, comment, or reply to. Main one for Desk is that they like to use email, right? You'll get a dedicated support email address first that you can then, whatever email client you're using, whether it's Gmail, Outlook, you're going to forward things from that, your support at mypersonaldomain.com and forward it to this zohodesk.com email address. You can set up additional support email addresses in here if you want to be able to channel and kind of siphon off things differently. Similarly, you can set that up also in Zendesk. If we go to email here, you can add additional external or Zendesk addresses. You can choose to send things via Gmail versus through the Zendesk servers themselves. Moving on from email in Zoho Desk, we have the telephony options. Now, you can use something like a Zoho Voice, but that is, a separate account that you have to have, or you could be using something like a Ring Central, but that is going to be a separate account. You won't be able to manage your credits or billing inside of Zoho Desk. You're going to have to use PhoneBridge to get that set up, and that's going to be done if you're on a Zoho One account, right? You'll set that up from your Zoho One admin panel. So you will need to get that set up differently. Chat window, right? It gives you the code to embed into your website. The Help Center, again, that's like the end user portal. We'll talk about those a little bit later when we get to that section. Instant messaging applications that you can directly integrate to. You can do business messaging through, say, WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger, Instagram, as well as connecting to social accounts like Facebook, X, or Instagram and looking at DMs that way. In Zoho Desk, you also have your web forms. This is similar to what we talked about with the contact forms inside of HelpDesk, right? Where you have a form on your website that people can put in information, submit a ticket, and then you'll be able to continue the conversation through email, right? And then finally, you have the community channel where you can set up different departments or categories of communities. These are like message boards people can interact with, and you can take a look at new posts that people have submitted onto your community tab and, answer any particularly spicy posts that might have somebody complaining about an issue or just questions needing some help. That's all of the channels that you have available. And again, in Zoho Desk, they like to kind of have those channels. You can just look at tickets and see kind of all the different channels together, but you can also go to sort of dedicated instant messaging or community or social tabs if you want to focus on those particular channels versus just looking at tickets from all the channels together. Big positives for Zendesk here is that you have built-in text and phone built into the Zendesk application. You do have to obviously, purchase additional things, but the fact that you can manage your numbers and everything like that all inside of the app is very nice. So if you are a phone or text heavy support system, Zendesk is probably a really good option for you. HelpDesk, again, just very simple, very bare bones, chat and email. That's what you got. Whereas Zoho Desk is sort of the middle child between those two extremes, right? Where you obviously do have a lot of channels available in terms of email, chat, as well as dedicated social media integrations like Facebook, Instagram. You can also connect with a telephony system, but you do have to bring your own telephony system as opposed to Zendesk where everything is baked in there. So again, if you are very reliant on talk and text, Zendesk might be a very good option for you. But if you do already have a telephony system set up, then Zoho Desk is a great option for connecting to that pre-existing telephony system. Also, if you have a lot of social media things to do, either Zendesk or Zoho Desk will be very good for you. HelpDesk is not very useful if you do a lot of stuff through social media because they just don't have those integrations built in, ready to go out of the box. All right, with that, next up comes probably the more exciting element, which is what are your customization and automation options? So again, let's head back to Zendesk. Here, we're going to take a look in the settings. This falls under objects and rules, right? So objects are the things that you can interact with in Zendesk, either usually tickets is the primary object, that you usually deal with. In here, you can have ticket forms, right? Determines the fields and data that a ticket contains. The individual fields within a given form, tags, this is where you can customize so you can add additional custom fields to a Zendesk ticket layout. A lot of the standard data types, right? Drop down, decision box, multi-line, multi-select, a regex field, which if you're a regex user like me, that is very fun to use. Number fields, date fields, decimals, as well as lookups, right? Links to other objects, right? Like a ticket to a user, a ticket to another ticket, a ticket to a different organization than perhaps the one that the original requester is a part of, any number of things. You can add additional custom statuses, right? You have their default ones of new, open, pending, and solved. You also see that they kind of are grouped in these larger headings. You have a new ticket, which is something that hasn't been touched by an agent. Open tickets are ones that can be ready to be worked on. So you've got both open and in progress here. Pending means that it's out of your team's hands and you're waiting on the customer or the requester to reply to it. And then finally solved, everything's done, hunky-dory, nothing else to do here. You can also assign different ticket statuses to different kinds of ticket forms inside of Zendesk. This is similar to layouts that we'll talk about in Zoho Desk. When you create a ticket status, you need to choose which category it's going to go into, and you only have these options, right? You can't change these because fundamentally you have to have everything has to be either open, pending, or solved. It's somewhere in there. Then within those, you can add additional ones, but they all have to fall under one of these three categories. And we'll see something similar in the other applications as well. You can have the name of the stage as it appears to the agent and the description that will appear to the agent, right? By default, whatever you name it here, the end user could see the same thing if they're using, some kind of help center or portal. If I wanted to say awaiting client input, right, as the name of my stage here, but I don't want my end user to see that name because that's a little clinical. So I could show the end user a different view for that status. So for example, the status name for my agent kind of indicates sort of a passivity, right? I'm awaiting my client to do something, but I need to engage the client in some action, right? So maybe I'll say that action needed is what the name of the status should be from the end user's point of view, right? This way, when one of my agents moves something to the awaiting client input, they're going to see action needed. And you can see this is already pretty similar to what they had in pending, right? Is what the agent sees, but then the end user sees a status called awaiting your reply. So that is a really nice thing in Zendesk here, is that you can kind of set up those different perspectives, right, between your agents versus your clients. All right, now let's talk about the automations. Here we have business rules is what Zendesk likes to call their automations. So you can set up triggers here, will help you, as I say here, automate common tasks whenever conditions are met, right? So I can create a trigger where I can say that if a ticket or the requester organization related to a ticket meet certain requirements, right? So for example, right now I have that if the organization on the ticket is not Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, then I can execute an action here. Different category is I can do something to the ticket, I can do something to the requester, or I can create a notification either by webhook, email, some kind of third-party integration. Let's say very simply that I want to set up an auto reply, right? So if the organization on ticket is not the Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, then let's say I want to have an auto reply. This is my auto reply. Then I will click on create trigger. Oh, sorry, need a name? Not Hogwarts. And the category here is going to be, I'll make a new category here called auto responders. And I'll click on create trigger. All right, so now I've added to the list of different triggers. So by default, you have various SLAs or service level agreements, such as notifying a submitter that a ticket has been received, notifying somebody that has been assigned a ticket that there's been a new comment, notifying them they've just been assigned a new ticket, etc. So all these come in by default, but you can set up other similar SLAs based off of triggers such as and this is just whenever a ticket is edited or created to meet those conditions that we specified. Similar, you have messaging triggers that are done when specific messaging actions happen, right? So when a agent replies to a customer or a new reply comes in from a customer, that's what would trigger one of these automations. Then you also have just this whole extra section called automations. These are ones where it's essentially the same stuff that we've been seeing, right? In terms of setting up the action should be changing a ticket element or a ticket status if certain conditions are met. Doesn't look quite as slick and clean as the triggers and messaging triggers elements. So I think this might be a relic from probably the old way of handling automations for tickets. But there is one kind of preset in here, say close ticket 4 days after the status is set to solved. All right, so in this one, we have if the ticket status is solved and the hours since the status category has been switched to solved is greater than 96 hours, right, 4 days, then we're going to perform the action of switching the status category of the ticket to closed, right? One of the other nice things is that you can click this preview match for conditions above to see if there are any tickets currently in your view that would match with these conditions, right? So you can have an idea of like how many tickets this is going to run on. I'm also going to hop here to service level agreements, right? Here's where you can set up policies for making sure that those accounts or customers that perhaps your VIPs that need any request from, Mr. Belvedere needs to get addressed right away. You can set that up here with a service level agreement. Usually that'll be based on the organization or requester, but it might just be stuff based on a ticket, right? If a ticket it comes in from a certain channel, right? You guys say that like any tickets that come in via chat, people are expecting quick, immediate replies. So those need to get resolved within an hour, right? As opposed to something coming in via email, probably have enough leeway with the customer that you can get back to them within, say, 12 hours instead of within 1 hour. So that's where you can set all of these up. So a lot of good triggers here. It's all kind of, I will say that I don't love how kind of segmented all of this is, whereas the triggers and the messaging triggers, like I would like if they were in the same spot. Spoiler alert, those things are in the same spot in Zoho Desk, which I like. But let's hop over into automations for HelpDesk. Now, automations are a little bit more featured in HelpDesk, right? That's one of the 5 key modules that you can see here. And so in here, we've got rules and macros, right? Rules are things that happen automatically when conditions are met, similar to the business rules that we saw before. Macros are more like buttons that you can click that are at the bottom of a ticket creation page. For example, they have some ready-made templates in here, such as a new ticket confirmation, right? We have it set up here that if the team is like our default team here, and the ticket has been created, and the number of messages sent by the requester is exactly 1, then we want to take this action of sending a message to that user saying, thank you for the email. We will reply as soon as we can, and replying with their case number, right? That's their new ticket confirmation here. Another one here, like a feedback request. When the team is support heroes, the status is solved, and we haven't gotten any rating requests from somebody, then we want to send that feedback request to them. So this is built very similarly. If anybody has used Zapier before, this is built very similarly to Zapier, if you're familiar with that application, where you kind of create this little string, this waterfall of elements here. If this and this and this, then this and this and this. Finally, let's hop over to Zoho Desk, where the automations section, kind of similar to Zendesk, where you do have kind of different segments, both of either assignment rules, workflows, macros, service level agreements, scheduled functions, etc. Assignment rules, because a big part of your desk management is the tickets get assigned to the right kind of people. You can choose whether to create direct assignment rules or round robin rules, which can be really nice to set up. If tickets fall under certain parameters, you can set up that tickets should be assigned based on load, sequentially just going through a list of people, or based on skills that you can assign to agents, which is really nice. Similar to the business rules we saw in Zendesk, we have workflow rules, where here, very similarly, you'll set up triggers and subsequent actions. You decide what module this workflow rule is going to be attached to. By default, usually you're adding something to tickets, but it might be something associated with calls, accounts, events, products module, whatever. We'll stick with tickets, and we'll call this new ticket rule. Here you can choose what different events is going to cause this workflow rule to execute, right? Is this just going to be on creation of a ticket, or is it going to be on editing of a ticket? Perhaps when a customer replies, an agent responds, a new comment's added, right? There's a lot of different options here. So I really like the level of customization you can get in the trigger settings, right? As opposed to in Zendesk, these triggers are simply if the ticket is edited at all to eventually meet the conditions, or if, in the case of a messaging one, specify just when a customer requests a conversation or somebody adds a new reply, right? But you have to create separate rules for each of these different events. Whereas the nice thing in Zoho Desk here is that you could have this execute on any of these types, multiple instances of these interactions, right? Just kind of depends on when and where you need this executed. Once you select when and where it's going to execute, you can define additional criteria that should filter out certain tickets, things like that. But you don't have to specify any criteria if you just want it executed on all tickets that go through these event changes. And then you have your actions here, right? And the different kind of actions you can have are alerts, which are like notifications getting sent out, usually via email, tasks being created, updating a field on a ticket or other related record, triggering custom functions, or doing something associated with skills or changing a layout. The way you add those is you come over here under actions. You have all of the different options that we kind of mentioned here, right? Alerts, field updates, ticket assignment, that sort of thing. Obviously, one of the huge benefits that Zoho Desk has is the ability to write custom functions, right? Something can't be done out of the box. Guess what? You can probably write a deluge script to get it done, right? And you can create a function where you'll be able to map in different arguments, put in all of your code in here, and you'll be able to pretty much do whatever you want, including communicating with third-party applications as long as you set up those connections, right? So that's where Zoho Desk shines, is the ability to write kind of whatever automations you want. Aside from just the ones that come out of the box, you can make anything happen. Credit due to Zendesk and HelpDesk, right? You can kind of execute custom functions, not within the application itself, but by setting up a business rule. One of the actions you can take is this notify by, and here you can do something via an active webhook, right? And you can set up a webhook here under apps and integrations, where you could basically send a payload of data to a third party, something like a Zapier or a Zoho Flow, something like that, that could run additional automations, but you are going to have a separate application for that, right? Something to receive those webhooks and that data. I guess you could also hit like an Amazon Web Services endpoint that if you have some kind of PHP or JavaScript running on, you'd be able to execute things there. But again, that does require a lot more technical expertise. So I know we talked a lot here in the customization and automation section, but I think the clear winner in terms of automations here has got to be Zoho Desk, with just the sheer number of ways that you can execute automations that are pre-built, as well as, the assignment rules is really cool. But definitely this one wins because of the fact that you can write deluge scripts. I can create custom functions that are written inside of the application that can run and communicate with, outside services if I need. But if I don't need to communicate with that outside service and I just want to use code and special logic all within my application, I can do all of that just within Zoho Desk itself. I don't even have to have Zoho One. I don't even have to have Zoho Flow or the CRM or Zoho Creator to be able to build these very custom and intense automations. All of that can be done in this standalone app. Obviously, you'll be able to get a lot of bang for your buck if you switch to Zoho One. But all in all, Zoho Desk, I think, is the clear winner here in terms of automations. Zendesk would, I think, get probably second in terms of the sheer number of rules and automations that you can do. And then a close third place is HelpDesk with its simplicity, but obviously it is very limited to what you can perform and when it gets performed. Next up is the use of self-service portals as well as knowledge base tools, right? These are ways that you can help your customers to help themselves. You have a good enough knowledge base, your service agents might not even have to talk to anybody. If you have good enough articles and documentation available on your site, people can often help themselves. But also, if you're, say, a B2B company where you might be having many different tickets open for one organization, they're going to want to be able to see all of the open, outstanding tickets that they have with your brand or company. And so a help center or self-service portal is going to be very beneficial to use. So in Zendesk, the way that you take a look at that section, it's almost like a separate app. And that's by coming into the upper right here. And by default, you're in the support section, right? That's where you're doing all of your ticket management and everything like that. If we want to access a help center that allows our end users to search knowledge base articles, right, answer their own questions, that's going to be getting to this knowledge section, which will then open up a separate set of settings and views, right? So inside of a help center, you want to add content. So the help center is centered around articles, right? Articles have information that your end users can look at to hopefully answer their own questions. Each of these articles you will associate to a particular category. Obviously, you can have them in drafts and then only publish them when they're ready to go. You can preview what a Help Center article is going to look like for your end users. The Help Center is a place that your customers can log into primarily to look at knowledge base articles, right? A chance for them to answer questions for themselves. But if you want, you can also use a Help Center to allow people to manage open tickets that they have with your agents. Once you've gone into, the products list here, turned on knowledge, activated the Help Center, you can activate your Help Center. People can start logging into it. You can set up within the Help Center settings, things like setting up multiple languages, how people can search for articles. Gather is the name of Zendesk's kind of community forum, right? Where you can have whether or not the community might even be active, as well as whether people can mention each other, that sort of thing. As well as user badges, if you know that people that have been using your community are like MVP answerers. Like let's say you got just a good old Samaritan that just can't help but answer questions, even though they don't work for your company, right? You can give them sort of an MVP badge, right? In addition, by default, the Help Center is primarily for knowledge-based articles. But again, you can enable agents and users to manage requests from that Help Center, which will then allow end users to be able to view, again, all of the tickets that they currently have open with you, as well as being able to search for those information articles. HelpDesk does not have a dedicated Help Center. HelpDesk is, again, just primarily used for direct email or chat communication, right? So in the case of HelpDesk, the Help Center is probably going to be something like that chat widget. Other than that, there is no dedicated login that your end users are going to need to have in order to access anything from their side when it comes to interacting with your agents via HelpDesk. And then Zoho Desk, very similar to Zendesk, where inside of the application settings, there is the Help Center is one of the channels that you can access. Within the Help Center, you can set up different brands for different kinds of help setters. Just like in Zendesk, you have different access settings, who can sign up, whether or not you want to moderate signups, or if only people can join the Help Center if you specifically invite them, right? That's the same in both Zoho Desk and Zendesk, moderation tools and things like that. I think a big difference between Zendesk and Zoho Desk is the kind of levels of like theming and customization that you can do inside of the Help Center. So what you can do in Zoho Desk is you can go into the Help Center customization settings, set what the, banners and headers look like, determine what, additional tabs or widgets might be available. Because maybe you don't want people to actually manage their own tickets. You just want people to be able to access those knowledge-based articles rather than actual ticket management. You could allow people to still add tickets, but just not be able to see a list of all active tickets, right? And if you wanted to keep that sort of back and forth interaction specifically over email rather than directly inside of the Help Center itself. In addition, you have widgets that you can create and add into your Help Center here. So a lot of customization options here in the Zoho Desk Help Center sphere, which is really, really cool. I'll go ahead and leave here and go back to my system settings. Again, a lot of granular control over user authentication, federated logins, SEO, setting up templates for how people can sign up, all that sort of thing. There's a lot of options there. So to summarize, in the case of self-service portals, I'd say that Zoho Desk and Zendesk are pretty neck and neck. I kind of like in Zoho Desk that dedicated section for editing and customizing the Help Center's, look and themes, which I think is really nice. But both the Zendesk and Zoho Desk Help Centers are really good at organizing and showcasing your knowledge base articles, getting them all set up into individual categories, that people can search through. And then obviously HelpDesk doesn't really have anything in this department, right? HelpDesk does not have knowledge base articles or any kind of separate end user portal. Everything is just done via either email or live chat. Finally, let's talk about reporting and analytics. So in the case of Zendesk, you come down here to this little reports tab. It actually prompts you to go to, again, similar to how they've kind of separated these different apps within Zendesk, right? You've got Zendesk Support, Zendesk Explore, Zendesk Guide, Talk, Chat, etc., right? So Zendesk Support, that's what we've been mostly looking at for the tickets. Zendesk Guide is what we looked at for the knowledge base and the help center. So Zendesk Explore is the analytics there. With Zendesk Explore, we have dashboards, which are made up of individual reports. So for example, the first dashboard up here, live data, including messaging. All right, this is going to load up here a bunch of little widgets here for like inactive conversations, calls started and completed, the number of agents online in the talk channel, support channel, direct messaging. There's filters that you can add on here to kind of add quick filters on the fly. Obviously, I just got a test account in here, so I don't have any data in here really to show you. But the nice thing is you can set up sharing to obviously allow individuals to come in here and take a look at these reports whenever they would like. You can also schedule delivery, right? So that you could kind of take a screenshot, as it were, of what a dashboard looks like, let's say every Monday morning, and then send that out to maybe some of your managers or CEOs, people who don't need to keep up to the minute information, but just kind of want bird's eye views on a regular basis. If you want to create additional reports, you can do so by going into the report section here, and we can create a new report. They actually have a new beta version. Let's go ahead and try it out. Right, what you do is first you need to select a data set that the report is going to be based on. Right, if it's something to do with tickets, help center, chat, etc. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to do support tickets, right? Because that's going to be the most common thing that I'm going to be making any reports on. There's only one data set version here. Then I pick what metrics I want to measure, or what are the things that I can measure in here, right? So by looking at the support tickets data set, I've got tickets, number of solved tickets, agent submitted, reopened tickets, number of incidents, problems, unreplied, unsolved, number of agent replies, etc., right? I'm not selecting anything here. It's just giving me information of what is available in this. So if I'm like, oh, no, the thing I was looking for isn't in here. Oh, I wanted to look at SLA specifically, right? And oh, okay, now I got all the SLA information here. But let's go ahead and go back to just support tickets. Then I'll click on Start Report, right? And then here, this is kind of similar to, it's almost like the building a pivot table in Excel, if any of our viewers have done that before. Right, where I have the metrics and then I have attributes here, where inside of the metrics is the stuff that I actually want to be measuring, right? So let's say I wanted to look at something to do with the tickets here. By default, it's going to say that the metric that I'm adding is a count. I can click on this to then change what the aggregate's going to be if I want it to be a regular count or a distinct count. All right, so let's say a distinct count, and I'm going to run this report. I've got 2 tickets. And that's because they're saying there's a filter here. The ticket created time has to be within the last 30 days, right? I can now add additional elements here, like unreplied tickets. Click on Run Report again, all right? So I've got 2 tickets, one of which has not been replied to. Let's say I want to group these ticket counts by the agent assigned to them. Right, I'm going to come here to the attributes then, that this is where I could add something to either the rows or columns. And so here I will look at, say, my assignee name, and I'll drop that here in the rows. And let's say I want to also see that for each of them, what channels those messages are associated to. So I'm going to look at ticket channel, and I'm going to drop that in. Let's say I want to do that as a column. So I'll add those in there, click on Run Report. Right, and now I can see that for the assignee, right, I've only got the one user in here of Zenatta demo, but it's now grouped by that assigned user. I can see the total number of tickets, the number of unreplied tickets, And then among the two different channels, right, one is coming from the web and one is coming from the channel of sample ticket, and then the metric repeated for each column that exists within this attribute, right, of channel. So once I finish creating that report, I'll save it, or I should give it a name, tickets by agent and channel. All right, I'll click on save here. Now inside of a dashboard, I could create a new dashboard. Could start with just a blank one, right? And this might look very similar to the analytics builder inside of the Zoho CRM for some of our astute viewers here. And what I want to do is I want to first add a tab to the dashboard. I'll go ahead and have a blank tab, or actually, I guess we start with just a default tab, so we'll leave that one there. And so now what I need to do is I need to add a report or more to this dashboard. Things that I can add to the dashboard: a report, a time filter, or a data filter, or some static text, right? So I'll come in here to report. I have my brand new tickets by agent and channel. I'll go ahead and click on that. Adds it to that dashboard there. Let's add another report. Sure, solved tickets by group, right? Obviously, again, no data available for this one because it's all just a demo account. But then let's say I wanted to add a time filter, right? Of say when the tickets were created, right? That's a very common one. So once I've added the filter, it automatically pops in over here. Obviously I could move it probably to the top here. And we can have whatever the default is. So we'll say like this month, right? And I probably want to move this. I want to keep these guys in line. So I'll probably just extend this guy out all the way here. And I now have a very rudimentary little dashboard built, right? With a time filter here that, you can change on the fly, and the results of the two reports. Moving on to HelpDesk reports here, you are a lot more limited in terms of the reports. They have kind of their just bare bones reports that are built in here, taking a look at, new tickets, ticket satisfaction rates. They have all their kind of just pre-baked ones. They got about, 9 or 10. You can generate a specific report, but this is just kind of exporting the data to be emailed as a CSV, right? So not actually like creating a new type of report. It's just exporting the data either of ticket performance or agent performance, which is going to be a combination of, these new tickets or ticket satisfaction versus response time or handling time. Obviously very limited here. You just have whatever it is that HelpDesk is going to give to you. Finally, in Zoho Desk, you're going to see something very similar to what we saw in Zendesk, but the nice thing is we actually get to stay inside of Zoho Desk. We don't have to hop into a new tab. I just need to go into the analytics section here. So I'm still in the same, tab within my browser. It's a tab within Zoho Desk, but one tab within my browser. Very similar to Zendesk, you have these dashboards that you can build, and I can create additional dashboards. I'll say new dashboard here. And you'll have components of reports, right? But you also have some nice things like some pre-baked gallery views of like different kinds of charts, KPI cards, which are nice, similar to you may have seen in Zoho Analytics or the CRM Analytics tab as well, right? If you kind of want either a comparison index, a bullet chart, a dial, something like that, you can build these little widgets, for lack of a better term, but they call them KPI cards for a reason. A list of a custom view of particular tickets. You can also embed URLs for Zoho Analytics dashboards if you're using Zoho 1 and you want to connect a proper Zoho Analytics table directly into one of these reports, which is where you can obviously, get some really granular data pushed in there. Only downside there is that you are limited to the 1 to 3 hour sync delay that you can set up between Zoho Desk and Zoho Analytics. But similar to Zendesk, right, you have your dashboards, right, which are collections of reports and those little KPI cards, things like that. And then reports, which you can create an additional one. You select which module is going to be the basis for it, any related modules that might be associated to it. So like say tickets, obviously it could be associated to contacts and accounts, right? Then I can choose if I want this to be a tabular report, a summary report, or a matrix report. Probably the most common one you're going to be using are summary reports. That's going to be where, similar to what we were just seeing in Zendesk, where you can like group by rows. This is just creating a pivot table, right? Tabular report is just raw data. Summary reports is like a pivot table. Matrix report is a pivot table, both in rows as well as columns. And here you can specify the groupings for both your row and column headings. Then you select the aggregates that you want to perform. So this is a little less smooth than I think Zendesk, where you can just kind of drag over a particular metric and then you can click and decide which aggregation you want to do on that metric. Whereas in Desk here, you have to scroll through the options of all the possible aggregations that you could do for any of the various metrics that you have here. This is a little less fun to work through than the Zendesk Analytics tab, but still same basic principles. And then, of course, you can add some pre-baked in filters that might apply to the whole dashboard. Then you have your standard filters here where you can decide what should be the quick filter that people can switch back and forth between to change the report on the fly. When you have these reports, you can compile them together in a given dashboard and display it here on this analytics homepage, right? By default, you can pick a default dashboard that you're going to see here, quickly switch between different ones. So overall, although Zendesk does have, as I mentioned, kind of a nicer interface for creating the reports and dashboards, I do think that Zoho Desk's dashboards and report elements look better, right? Like I actually have like chart views and like I get colors and I get different little KPI cards, which you can also get in Zendesk, but I just think that they come together better here in Zoho Desk. Plus, the huge thing is the fact that if you're already in the Zoho ecosystem, especially if you're in Zoho 1, you have access to Zoho Analytics, which is such a powerful BI tool that you can really get, you can go crazy with the amounts of analytics that you can do with SQL tables and pivot tables and things like that you can always bring into your dashboard views here. But I will say that Zendesk is a close second in terms of that. It's just a little less, I think it's a little less fun to look at, kind of seems a little blasé in my opinion. And then finally in third place, you've got HelpDesk, which you're just limited to the reports that they give you. All right. Well, I think that is going to do it for our video today. I know I've taken you guys through a lot of stuff, but I wanted to try to give you guys as clear a picture as possible of the different capabilities of these three HelpDesk solutions. So if I were to summarize all of kind of the stuff we've gone over, right? When it comes to ticket management, I'd say that Zendesk definitely gets some positive points in terms of kind of having that mentality of like, get your people to kind of churn through tickets as much as possible, as well as being able to work multiple tickets from different views and departments kind of at the same time. It allows agents to kind of control their own flow and process, which I think is nice. However, I do really like Zoho Desk's different work mode things, right? Those Kanban views, which I think can be really helpful and useful in tackling your workload instead of just a straight list or tabular view. And then HelpDesk, for ticket management, good, clean, simple, fewer channels. We talk about the channel support. HelpDesk, not very many channels. You just have chat and email. That's it. Zoho Desk, really good in terms of, connecting to social media, direct messaging, business messaging apps, and of course, email. You can set up telephony, but you do have to bring your own telephony system, where Zendesk probably wins in the multi-channel support if you are particularly dependent on phone calls and texting, because all of that can be managed directly within the Zendesk application. For customization and automation, I gotta give it to Zoho Desk because of the fact that you can write custom functions inside of the application, right? Deluge is such a hard thing to beat in terms of customization and automations, right? You can do almost whatever you want. There are a lot of automation options in Zendesk, a lot less in HelpDesk that you can do, but it's just hard to beat custom functions. And of course, I'm biased because I know how to write code. So I get really excited at that opportunity. Whereas if you're somebody that the idea of setting up a lot of complicated rules is very daunting and potentially frustrating, HelpDesk actually is very nice. That I did kind of like its streamlined, sort of Zapier style flow. I think is probably going to be easier for people to work with than Zendesk's automations. The menus I think were a little bit clunky. So I'd say that Zoho Desk, obviously, in terms of just raw power, that wins. But if you like good, clean, simple, streamlined things, HelpDesk is probably nicer for that. Self-service portals. Obviously, HelpDesk is out of the running. They don't have one. I'd say that Zoho Desk and Zendesk are pretty much neck and neck in terms of the self-service portal. They operate almost exactly the same way. And then in terms of analytics, I think that Zoho Desk edges out Zendesk a little bit more in terms of just like, I like the way their reports and dashboards look. I think they look better. I think there's more color, a little more vibrancy, as opposed to kind of the bare bones look of Zendesk's reporting tools. Plus, if you're in the Zoho ecosystem, you probably have access to Zoho Analytics if you're using Zoho One, and you have a lot more reporting options through that BI tool that is pretty hard to beat, in my opinion. So ultimately, if you are a tiny team and you just need some quick and easy ways to answer emails in a way that's not just working out of your Gmail or Outlook inbox, then HelpDesk, I think, is a really nice option for those really lightweight teams that just need, my customers are going to message me sometimes, I need to be able to message them back in a quick and easy way. HelpDesk is great for that. If you're talking larger teams or lots of different incoming channels, then Zendesk and Zoho Desk are going to be your better options for larger, medium to large business size options. If you are very dependent on talk and text, telephony, and you don't already have a telephony solution, then Zendesk is probably a way that you want to go, since they have so much stuff dedicated to just having all that integration pre-built into the application. But if what you're looking for is adding a lot of automations and customizations, I think that Zoho Desk is going to give you a lot of really good bang for your buck, especially because, again, you have the ability to write custom code directly in Zoho Desk to make it do almost whatever you want. Kind of comes down to how many features do you need out of the box. If you need a lot of features out of the box and you don't want to have to do any kind of custom work, Zendesk is a really good option. If you don't need much, you just need a bare bones tool, HelpDesk is great. And if you kind of want the ability to dream and design whatever it is you can think of, then Zoho Desk has got to be your primary option. I know I gave you guys a lot of information. It was probably like drinking from a fire hose, but I know that this is not a trivial decision, right? For all of you business owners out there, having a proper support desk set up for your clients is a crucial decision. And picking the right one is no easy feat. So hopefully today we were able to give you a little bit of insight into comparing Zendesk, HelpDesk, and Zoho Desk in a way that you guys could make a much better informed decision. Obviously, if you are leaning towards Zoho Desk, right, which we're big fans of here at Zenatta, and you want any help implementing that solution for your team, go ahead and go to Zenatta.com and click on book a meeting, and we'd be happy to get talking to you guys right away about how our team can help your team help your users. Well, again, that is going to do it for us here today at Zenatta Consulting. Once again, I'm Greg Belknap. It's been my pleasure to meet with you guys. Thank you so much for your time. If you found it helpful, please like, comment, and subscribe here on YouTube, and we'll see you in the next video.